Welcome back to Sea Power, everyone. I've got to say, I've been really enjoying this game over the 20 or so days that I've had it. Just so you know, I received this game for free, and this game is in early access, so everything you see is subject to change. But now that all that's out of the way, like I said, I've really been enjoying this game. Been having some silly fun, been making some scenarios, including the Channel Dash scenario that you may have seen on Stealth 17's channel, if you've been paying attention to Stealth 17's channel. I know that my channel tends to focus more on racing games these days, but having Asperger's, I have an interest in a whole lot of things, and while I still love warships, I may have stopped playing World of Warships, but Sea Power is getting me into the Cold War missile age of ships. I never used to like the Cold War, but all this stuff, it's really piquing my interest, and I've learned so many new things. Now, Sea Power has a whole bunch of ships in the game, and that number will increase probably sometime next year. Right now they're going to try and focus on fixing all the bugs and improving the AI and getting save/load implemented. Which is fine, you know, that stuff takes priority over getting new units. But I can't help but wonder what units they're going to put into the game in future. And I thought I'd take a little bit of a look, and for this we're going to focus first on the Americans. They are the primary NATO force in Sea Power, so why not look at some of the ships that could be added? Most of the American ships in the game represent sort of 70s and 80s NATO forces. Well, American forces rather. Like, you've got the Spruance class destroyer, you've got the Kidd, you've got the Belknap and the Lehigh and the Virginia, you've got the Nimitz class carrier, but everything up until about a cut-off of 1985. There are, however, a few earlier units, like this, the Galveston class guided missile cruiser. What this ship is essentially a modified Cleveland class light cruiser. There were actually two variants of this, however. The Galveston, which had the Rim 8 Talos beam riding missile, and then there was the Providence class light cruiser, well, guided missile cruiser, which instead of the Rim 8 Talos had the smaller Rim 2 Terrier missile. There are also sub-variants within the class. What you're seeing here is the flagship variant. The Little Rock and the Oklahoma City for the Galveston class looked like this, with the one single 6-inch main battery turret remaining and a single 5-inch battery remaining, whilst the Galveston herself was not upfit like this, and she had enhanced main gun firepower. She had 2 of her primary 6-inch battery remaining and 3 of her 5-inch dual batteries. And much the same thing happened with the similar Providence class. Providence and Springfield were upfit as fleet flagships, whilst the Topeka had the enhanced main battery. Well, gun battery, that is. I really hope that we get to see the Providence class at some point, because these earlier ships are still an important part of the US naval history. Especially because I do believe the Terrier missile was a better missile. I mean, they're still using the Rim 2 Terrier body for the standard missile, the SM-1, SM-2 series. I'm not even sure they're still using the standard missile. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe I should look that up. Currently in the game, though, we only have the Galveston class, and it's the Galveston class flagship version, the Oklahoma City and the Little Rock. But if you choose the name USS Galveston, you still have the fleet flagship variant, which is wrong. The real Galveston had the extra main battery turret and extra secondary battery turrets. You know, the extra 6-inch and extra 5-inch turrets. It shouldn't look like the fleet flagship variant, which, I mean, I guess it's understandable that they've gone with this blanket fleet flagship outfit, as the only one that exists is the USS Little Rock. It still exists as a museum ship, which is a nice thing. It's the last remaining Cleveland-class light cruiser of any sort, even if it's a Galveston now, but whatever. Having the option to choose between the Talos-equipped Galveston and the Terrier-equipped Providence would be nice to have, as well as the variants that did not have the fleet flagship upbit, such as Galveston herself and the Topeka. Now, talking about a couple of other ships that were equipped with the RIM 8 Talos, the telegraph pole missile as sometimes it is known, we're going to talk about the Albany class guided missile cruisers. This frankly bizarre looking set of 3 guided missile cruisers were originally built as Baltimore or Oregon City class heavy cruisers during or shortly after the Second World War. They were rebuilt in the 1960s, I think, as these guided missile cruisers, using primarily the RIM 8 Talos as their primary missile armament, as well as a couple of twin launchers for the RIM 24 Tatar. They also apparently have a couple of 5-inch guns somewhere on there, but I've looked at a dozen pictures of these things and I can't find them for the life of me, so maybe I'm just blind. Yeah, these ships, very odd looking, and they're like that because, well, the bridge crew have to be able to see over the massive guidance systems for the RIM 8. Yeah, those things you can see just ahead of the main bridge superstructure, that's the guidance system. Those RIM 8 Talos missiles were absolutely gigantic. They needed to be assembled before they could be launched. They were stored in 2 pieces, I believe, at the very least. Yeah, huge missile, and they became obsolete, or were at least recognised as obsolete, by the time the 1980s rolled around, and in 1980, all 3 ships of the class were decommissioned, or at least the remaining 2 were. One of them was retired a few years early. They sat around in reserve for a few years before finally being scrapped in 1990. Very interesting ships, I think, that I reckon deserve to have their time in the limelight in sea power. Another bizarre looking ship equipped with the RIM 8 Talos missile system was the unique USS Long Beach. I do believe Triassic Games have said that they want to include this ship at some point, or maybe I misread things, but yeah, this ship had 2 twin-arm launchers, initially for the Terrier missiles, later replaced with the standard missiles, and the assembly line for the RIM 8 Talos. But of course, when that system was retired in 1980, the Long Beach, which was still effective, or at least they still wanted to keep her around for a while longer, they decided to replace the Talos missile system with the Tomahawks. Turned this into quite a dangerous ship, which means that the Long Beach could have 2 variants put into the game. The initial variant of the ship that had the 2 Terrier missile twin-arm launchers, getting a word salad, and the twin-arm launcher for the RIM 8 Talos, and her later life variant where she had the 2 twin-arm launchers for standard missiles and 1 or 2 box launchers for the Tomahawk missile. RGM 109, I think it was called. Something along those lines. Yes, Long Beach would be nice to have especially because it is the attack of the cube. And I think it was also the last US Navy ship built using an actual cruiser-style hull. Every cruiser built after this was just a scaled-up destroyer hull. Even the Ticonderoga class cruisers have essentially Spruance-class destroyer hulls. Yeah, Long Beach, long gone now, but a pioneer of her time. I believe the first nuclear-powered guided missile cruiser to enter service anywhere. Some other unique nuclear-powered guided missile cruisers would have been the USS Truxtun, which was essentially a nuclear-powered version of the Belknap class cruiser. Well, sort of. I say essentially. It did have differences. It is distinct enough from the Belknap, but closely related to the Belknap. Then there's USS Bainbridge, a nuclear-powered variant of the Lehigh class cruiser, which is already in the game, but you know, Bainbridge was still different enough to be considered its own separate class of ship. And then there's the closely related to both classes, of Belknap and Lehigh, the California-class nuclear-powered guided missile cruisers, which were their own separate class, but still similar enough. Speaking of things that are nuclear-powered, you generally tend to think of carriers as the nuclear-powered surface ships, at least in US Naval service. They certainly are the only nuclear-powered surface ships in US Navy service currently, so why not include the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise CVN-65. There's not really much to say about this ship. It would have similar capabilities to a Forrestal or a Kitty Hawk. The carriers in the game are just, well, carriers. There's not really much to say about them, just that it would be nice to have. Something else that would be nice to have? The earlier conventional powered carriers. I know we already have some conventionally powered carriers in the game. We've got the Forrestal and the Kitty Hawk and the America. We need the John F. Kennedy as well, but it would be nice to have something else, like the Essex class or the Midway class. Why not include the helicopter variant of the Essex, like the USS Valley Forge, or some more amphibious assault ships, like the Iwo Jima class amphibious assault ships? There's plenty of ships you can choose from. I've already mentioned the Ticonderoga class guided missile cruiser, and that is in the game, but it's the original twin-arm launcher variant of the ship, such as the Ticonderoga, the Yorktown, the Vincennes, the Valley Forge, and the Thomas S. Gates, which oddly isn't in the game. As you can see, it's got two Mark 26 twin-arm launchers for standard missile 2s, but the current version of the Ticonderoga that exists in real life, because all of the original twin-arm variants have been scrapped, is the VLS variant. And who knows, maybe we could see the early VLS, vertical launch system, Ticonderoga get introduced. CG-52, whichever one that was called, I can't remember. As well as, potentially, the very earliest Arleigh Burke class destroyers, such as the Arleigh Burke itself, the DDG-51. Who knows? We could see these early Aegis class, well, Aegis variant ships. I'm getting all my words mixed up, help! Also included in the game are the Iowa class battleships. Now, it's great that we have these. They were Cold War vessels, especially towards the end of the Cold War when they were recommissioned and refit in the 1980s to have Harpoon and Tomahawk missiles. But it would be nice to see the original variant of the Iowa, you know, with more guns all over it. But also, potentially, who knows? Because since we've already got one speculative ship in the game, well, paper ship, so to speak, the Orel-class Russian aircraft carrier, how about another paper ship that was speculative that could have existed? The USS Kentucky BBG-1, the Guided Missile Battleship. One of the proposals would have seen the USS Kentucky BB-66 finished as BBG-1 with her main battery of 16-inch guns supplemented by up to 4 RIM-8 Talos missile launchers and 12 RIM-24 Tartar surface-to-air missile launchers. That's a lot of missiles. Of course, this was during the time when ship-to-ship missiles were still in their infancy, and I don't think the USA even had anti-ship missiles at this time, especially ship-launched versions. I mean, you could use these surface-to-air missiles in a secondary anti-surface mode. I mean, you saw me doing it with the Galveston earlier. The RIM-8 Tartar, big missile, but probably not the most potent anti-ship weapon. Especially, did I call it a Tartar or a Talos? RIM-8 Talos. Whatever. Not especially potent as an anti-surface weapon, but could still give the ship a lot of anti-aircraft capabilities. Could have been very potent had it ever entered service, had it ever happened. Who knows? One thing to think about, certainly. What I also want to see more of in the NATO side, more gun cruisers. You have the Des Moines class heavy cruiser, an absolutely incredible ship. It could fire its 8-inch guns very quickly, and it had one hell of an anti-aircraft armament, at least for a cruiser of World War II style caliber, which this definitely was. It was probably the best heavy cruiser ever built. Another heavy cruiser based vessel would be the Boston class guided missile cruisers. These were used more in their original role as heavy cruisers towards the end of their lives, but they were equipped with RIM-2 Terriers, so it's sort of a hybrid vessel, sort of, kind of in the same vein as the Kentucky BBG, potentially. And lastly, some more gun destroyers, like the Forrest Sherman class, especially something weird like the USS Hull, which had the 8-inch gun for a few years. That would be pretty cool, I think. Now it's time to look at my own nation, the United Kingdom, the Royal Navy, and what better way to start off than with the last British battleship ever built, HMS Vanguard. Now, yes, I know, she didn't exactly serve very long into the missile age, but this would be such an awesome ship to have. We need more battleships in this game, if you ask me. I still love my battleships. I was a battleship main on World of Warships. I loved my battleships. I still love them. More battleships, please! Talking more about Cold War ships and missile ships, how about something else, like the Type 21 frigate? Now, we know that the Royal Navy will eventually come to sea power. There's almost certainly going to be a Falklands War DLC. So the Type 21 being one of the primary ships of that conflict, it makes sense for it to come. It would almost certainly come along, including this other type of ship that saw service in the Falklands War, the Type 42 destroyer. These were designed more as anti-aircraft and escort vessels, so they don't have anti-ship missiles like the Type 21 frigate does. which had MM38 exocets, which is something I didn't even know. The Type 42s only have, I think they're Sea Dart anti-aircraft missiles. Still unique ships, very well known. They were served for a good few years, and you could sort of double dip by not just including the British variants, but also the 2 Argentine Type 42 destroyers that served until, well, this year, when the last one was retired. At least one other class of British warship that took part in the Falklands War was the County-class destroyers, such as this, HMS Antrim. You see that funny looking cage thing on the stern of the ship just behind the helicopter? That is the launching system for the unique and bizarre looking Sea Slugger missile. The Falklands War, I think, was the only time the Sea Slugger was ever fired in anger. I think they launched a total of 8 missiles. It never hit anything because it was old and rubbish. Very strange looking missile, at least when it was sitting in the launcher. Had the boosters at the front. These ships could also mount the MM38 Exocet, so yet another launch platform for it. And yet another launch platform for the British Exocets was this, the Type 22 frigate, which I'm not sure actually saw service in the Falklands War, but it certainly saw service, including in the Gulf War, where certain HMS Brazen nearly took a missile. Namely an AM-39 Exocet that would have been launched from an Iraqi, I think it was a Mirage F1, before it got shut down by a Saudi Arabian F-15. Thank you, the mighty Jingles, for your service. There is one unique British destroyer that was planned to be a class of destroyers for escorting the, I think it was meant to be the CVA-01 supercarrier that never saw service, never even got off the drawing board. That would be the Type 82 destroyer HMS Bristol. She served in the Falklands conflict, as did many other British warships of the Cold War of that sort of time. I think even a Leander-class frigate from the New Zealand Navy actually took part, which is weird. Guess you could include those as well. But yeah, HMS Bristol won off in the end, even though she was meant to be a class. Largely, once again, made for anti-aircraft duties with a whole bunch of those rubbish Seacat missiles. I think they were using M-class, manual command line of sight missiles. Rubbish missiles, if you ask me. Yeah, the ship served from 1973 until 1991 as an actual warship until her boilers exploded, and she spent the rest of her life as a training ship. She still exists. She was decommissioned in 2020. One wonders if she will be scrapped or not. There's one other class of British surface warship that isn't a carrier that we could include, if we just about squeeze it in and use the same rules as we did with the VLS Ticonderoga, and that is the Type 23 frigate, the first of which was commissioned in 1987. I reckon that you could squeeze one or two into the game and still call it a day. These things have harpooner missiles, so they fit in quite nicely. I think they even have a Seaways system. They've got, I think, vertical launch systems for Sea Wolf missiles? Not a bad class of warship, as I understand. Still got a few running around, still being stretched in service whilst we wait for the Type 26 to come along. Now, I just mentioned this, CVA-01, the proposed British supercarrier / fleet carrier. We haven't had a fleet carrier since 1979 when the HMS Ark Royal R09 was decommissioned, and this would have been her replacement if we had the money. We've never had enough money since we lost our empire. Curse you! But yes, this ship would have been fantastic. Could have operated Phantoms, as we can see from this artist's illustration here. Could have operated other things, who knows? probably would have been on its way to decommissioning right about now, who knows? If it had actually served. But knowing our government, we would have retired it after 15 years and sold it to Chile or something. As with the Soviet Orel-class carrier, I reckon we could include this under the same reasons. You know, just add a little bit of air parity to the British forces, the Royal Navy. If not, though, we do have a very real carrier that operated McDonnell Douglas Phantoms, and that was HMS Ark Royal that I literally just mentioned. The last British fleet carrier. It wasn't really a super carrier, it was just a fleet carrier, as it was based off of a World War II design. Like, seriously, the ship was laid down in something like 1942, and it took until 1955, if I remember correctly, for her to actually be commissioned. Ouch. At least she did see service, and then she got unceremoniously decommissioned and scrapped. Oh wow. Stuff happens, I guess. Can I just say what an awesome name that is, Ark Royal? Who thought that was a good name? Because I want to shake their hand. Well, I guess I can't, they're probably long dead, but who cares? What a ship! And whilst we're talking about HMS Ark Royal, why don't we talk about the other one? Not the one that was sunk by a U-boat in 1941, I mean the one that was decommissioned in 2011, the second of the Invincible class aircraft carriers. HMS Invincible herself did, of course, take part in the Falklands War. She was pretty much brand new at the time. I think the Argentines claimed that they sank her 3 times or something. And, of course, like the legendary USS Enterprise CV-6, she was completely untouched. The only thing that could sink her was British stupidity, because she was decommissioned in 2005. Yeah. I remember seeing the ship laid up in Portsmouth. Oh, damn. If you're going to have a Falklands DLC, you can't have it without HMS Invincible, because she was one of the primary platforms that Sea Harriers are launched from. She was incredibly important in our campaign to take back our islands. Another vital platform for launching Sea Harriers was HMS Hermes, the last Centaur-class aircraft carrier, seen here in her last days as INS Virat. I really wish we could have managed to save her. What an icon she would have been. But yeah, this ship, the Falklands War, was her last hurrah, and she performed spectacularly. It would be great to have her come to sea power as one of Britain's carriers. I think I'm gonna cut the video off around about now, but I think there's one last ship that I would like to see, because during the Falklands War there were plenty of ships that were civilian vessels that had been commandeered essentially by the Royal Navy to be used as troop carriers and aircraft, well, maybe not aircraft carriers, but to carry the equipment to the Falklands War, that whole long 8,000-mile journey to the southern hemisphere of the world. And one of those ships was this, the container ship Atlantic Conveyor. She was used essentially as a helicopter carrier. She carried a whole bunch of Chinook helicopters. She was essentially used a lot like a helicopter landing ship carrier. I literally just said that. Yeah. But then she was sunk after an Exocet hit her. I don't think she was even the intended target, but she sank with the loss of all but one of her Chinook helicopters, and that Chinook performed the job of something like 8 helicopters for the rest of the war, and it didn't break down once, I think. It performed extremely well. I think it even got preserved. But yeah, Atlantic Conveyor and the other civilian ships of the British expeditionary fleet, like SS Canberra, would be nice to have represented. Right, I'm out of ideas for now. If I think of any other ships that I'd like to see in the game, like anything from the Soviets or the French or whatever, I'll make another video. Maybe. Until next time, thank you for watching, and good night.